Hello and welcome back to the Adventures in Marketing podcast. If this is your first listen, thank you for joining me. If you are a returning listener, thank you very much for coming back and listening again. If you haven't subscribed or followed, I think Apple changed how they say that. Either one, make sure you're doing that so that you get new episode alert. And then if you haven't left me a review yet, I would love a review. They help listeners or potential listeners, I guess, decide whether or not they want to listen to the podcast. So if you could like and follow or subscribe or however Apple calls it these days and leave me a review, that would be great. And speaking of reviews, that's actually what we're going to talk about in this episode, because one of the things that I see small business owners get really nervous about is reviews. And they sometimes are even nervous to have reviews turned on their Facebook pages, or they are nervous to have visibility in places where somebody could leave them a review, because we have all heard those nightmare stories, right? Of bad reviews, damaging businesses, and all of the stress that comes with that. So what I wanted to talk about in today's episode is, you got a bad review. Now what? Because I think that if we understand the steps to take after we get a bad review, it makes it less scary to potentially get a bad review. And then it gives us a little bit more power. It makes us feel a little bit more in control than we would have otherwise. I kind of look at it as if there are three basic types of reviews. And I'm sure somebody else who does what I do might have a different approach, but this one's going to be mine. So number one is the completely fake, completely false, they've never bought from you, worked from you, you don't know who they are review. That's number one. Number two is, yes, it's a real customer, but what they're describing didn't actually happen, or they are maybe being a little dramatic or overblowing it. So that's number two. And number three is, yes, real customer, real issue. Maybe you messed up and dropped the ball on that. So those are the types of reviews that I want to talk about today and how to handle each of them. One of the things to think about is, first of all, do people even look at reviews? Yes, they do. I actually did a study a couple of years ago. It was a poll of over 1,000 people, and 64% said they always look at reviews. 35% of the respondents said they sometimes look at the reviews. So when you add those two percentages up, it's pretty much everybody. Everybody looks at reviews. And that is where I think business owners get really nervous about the potential of a bad review, because they understand that people look at reviews. But does one bad review necessarily sink you? No, not at all. And I think as a reader and a consumer of reviews, because I'm sure that you read reviews before you work with somebody or before you buy a product, you kind of understand where this is going, I think. And when it's separate from your business, it's easier to understand versus, one bad review in your business and you can feel like it's the end of the world. One of the questions I asked in that poll of over 1,000 people is, how many bad reviews does it take for you to question whether or not you should do business with the company? And you might have a number in your head right now. You might be thinking exactly this number. If there's more than this many bad reviews, I'm not going to work with them. But what's more likely is that you are going to look at all of the different reviews and you are going to look for patterns and you're going to look for similarities. And that's probably what you're going to base your own interpretation of those reviews on. You might also be looking for, is this an issue I would have a concern with? Is this the issues that are being described, the reviews that are being written, the things that are negative about this product or the service, is this something that I'm going to have a problem with, or is that something that's not going to affect me? It's not going to affect my purchase because I don't look at products that way, however that works. So I think that's something that's really important to think about, is that somebody isn't necessarily looking for one bad review. It's not as if they see one-star review and then they bounce off your page, never to return. I really don't think most people are like that. But I do think that most people do look for patterns. They look for reoccurring instances. They look for things that would impact them versus just a general review. The other thing to think about is when people are looking at these reviews, they are also looking at how you respond to reviews. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But that's something to think about too. And I'm sure, again, as somebody who purchases things, you have probably read a review and maybe you've seen a review from the shop owner or the business owner, right? And how they respond can impact whether or not you move forward with a purchase, right? With that knowledge in mind and with that kind of thought process, What do you do when you receive a bad review? First of all, most people panic, and that's okay. It is hard to have somebody criticize our baby, and our businesses a lot of times are like our babies. They're important to us, and the idea that somebody maybe didn't have a good experience or didn't understand what we were offering to the point that they left us a bad review can be really disheartening and frustrating, and again, a little panic-inducing, because it is so common among business owners to think that one review is terrible and it's the worst, and it can be. I mean, it depends on how you handle it, right? So let's talk about how we're going to handle these. Let's go back to those first 3 review types that I mentioned at the top of the episode. So the first one is if it is a complete false, you've never heard of this person review, you can report it. On most platforms, you can report the review. You can also ask friends and family to report it to sort of signal the algorithm that there's something funky with this review. Next, you need to leave a calm and reasonable response, because when you are thinking about how you respond to a review, you are not just responding to that one person, especially if it's probably a fake person, right? But you are actually responding to everybody who ever reads that review. So that is everybody today, in 3 months, in 6 months, in 5 years, because we know that these reviews stick around on the internet for a long time, right? The way that you respond is the way that the future customers are going to look at how you respond. And they're going to look at that as a way to determine if you are somebody who would respond reasonably if they had an issue. You can usually say something like, "We've checked our records. We don't have anything from you on file. Please contact us so we can help." What that does is it shows everybody, number one, that this is probably a fake review, right? If this person leaves you a 1-star review, a lot of times they won't even fill out their profile or their name or anything like that. You're saying, "I don't have a record of you, but please contact me. Let me make this better." That shows that you're willing to work with somebody who has a questionable experience. It shows transparency, and it also indicates that the reviewer may have maybe left a review for the wrong business. I've seen that happen. Or maybe they were a troll, or maybe they were a competitor. As long as you're responding calm and clearly, that makes it better. If you get a response from this person, and I'll talk about this more in the next section too, you really want to try to move it off of social media. And I will talk about that next as we go into what if it is a real customer and either the issue is real and they maybe exaggerated it a little bit, or the issue is real and it was totally on you and you're the one that messed up. When it's that kind of instance, you really need to check your ego first. Because again, this is your baby. This is your business. I get it. People feel very protective of something that they are building, and the idea that somebody doesn't like it or didn't have a bad experience can really trigger all sorts of stuff in us that we have to keep a rein on when we are responding to this. So if it is an overblown review or it's something that you messed up on, how much of it is true? And that is something that we kind of have to own up to, right? If, we told a customer that something was going to be shipped by the 15th and it didn't go out until the 1st of the next month and it was completely on us, we really have to own that, and we have to figure out in our systems how to make it better. Or if we said we were going to be somewhere and we weren't, either because, a car broke down or you overslept or any of those kinds of things, if it's a true statement, we have to own up to it. We can apologize. We can ask the customer how to make it right. We can work with the customer. Again, how can you fix it for the future? These are all things to be thinking about. And when we are having these conversations with potentially upset people, we really want to try to move it off of social media, meaning off of a public space, and into something more private, like an email. Remember that everything you write can be screenshotted and can become public. But if it is taken off of social media, it allows the customer a lot of times to feel like they're getting one-on-one support. They're getting actual humans to talk to instead of just talking to your avatar on social media. It also means that if they are feeling especially riled up and they are egging on friends and family to leave bad comments or to leave bad reviews or any of those kinds of things, if you pull it off of social media, it removes the heat from that because they're getting one-on-one attention. They are feeling heard. They are feeling like their issues are going to be resolved. And a lot of this is how you handle it, right? So that's why you have to check your ego. You have to remain calm. You have to remain professional. You need to not escalate things, even if they're in the mood to escalate things, because the more calm and clear and collected you are, in most instances, they will bring that down to meet your level. If you start to escalate, they'll start to escalate. So you want to keep it calm and reasonable, and you need to figure out a way to fix it. You need to figure out a way to fix it for this customer, and you need to figure out a way to make sure that it doesn't happen again. You can use it as a learning experience in your business. And again, your ego is going to be bruised. You are going to definitely want to vent to somebody. You just don't want to vent to the customer or in any place that could be screenshotted and shared, because that never, trust me, it never goes well. The other thing you can do too is if you start to feel ganged up on, or if you feel as if this might become sort of an ongoing sort of a pile-on situation, in most places, not everywhere, but some places you can actually turn off your reviews temporarily, and that can be really helpful, and that can be a good idea also. The reason is, again, if they are feeling incredibly unhappy and they are feeling like they want to bring in friends and family and random strangers in a Facebook group because they posted about how terrible you were and everybody's going to run over and leave a bad review for you, that's harder to control. So if you feel like it's going to be that kind of situation, it's okay to turn the comments off until things pass. You might get some heat for that. Just be aware of that. But I think taking heat temporarily for turning off reviews makes more sense than having 20 one-star reviews from somebody's upset friends and family. I think that's the way that works. To wrap this up, bad reviews will probably happen. I actually have a 1-star review on this podcast episode from, I don't know who it came from. It was the episode from 2020 where I basically said, I don't want you to listen to this podcast episode, but here are 4 other podcasts in marketing, about marketing, done by Black women, and you should go listen to those. I posted that and immediately got a 1-star review. I don't know who it was from. Probably not somebody who's still listening. And that's okay. There is no way I can address that. There is no way I can have a conversation with that person because they just left a 1-star and bounced. And that's fine. I have heard some people say that they have trouble trusting a business that only has 5-star reviews, that, you know, a 3-star review or a 4-star review or a 4.5 or a 2-star review mixed in with all of the 5-star reviews can make them feel better and make them feel like it's a real business. And I do understand that. However, as somebody who only has 5-star reviews, I'm pretty proud of my 5-star reviews in my business, not my podcast. So I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. I think what most of us do is that we look at all of the reviews of a product or a service that we want to either purchase or work with, somebody we want to work with, and we sort of form a vision of what that's going to be based on the reviews. If, for example, you are going to buy, I don't know, a hairbrush, and all of the reviews say that after 3 months, all of the little bristly things fall out. If there are 5 or 6 or 10 reviews that say that, then you're probably not going to buy that brush. If there's one person who says that and everybody else says it's fine, then it's probably not something that's going to bother you. So just going forward, know that as a business owner, when you are putting yourself out there, you are selling a product, you are being visible in the community, there is a likelihood that you'll get a 1-star review. But how you handle it, what those next steps are, determine how much it impacts your business. So thank you for listening. I hope this episode was helpful. If you have questions, if I missed something, please feel free to send me an email, gwen@gwenmontoya.com. You can also find more about me on my website, gwenmontoya.com. Join my Adventures in Marketing group where we do this kind of ongoing support and resources and feedback, and make sure that you are subscribing to the podcast.